Welcome to the Soul Revival Podcast, where we have deep and meaningful conversations exploring modalities, tools, and healing, guiding you back to your most expansive soul self. I am so excited for round 2 of our conversation with Scott Graham. Thank you for coming back to the Soul Revival.
I am glad to be here. And I have to tell you, Lindsay, I forgot. I hope I'm not wearing the same clothes that I was wearing the last time that we
Isn't that always a liability of recording multiple things?
it is, especially when it's chilly out and you put on, you've got certain warm things that you put on.
I can tell you
So,
with confidence you were not wearing the same thing.
okay, good. Thank you.
So Scott and I ended the last recording and had so many offshoot conversations that we knew that we needed to come back and do a part 2. And I think for me personally, and I think a lot of the people listening, it's particularly poignant how you reflected back 5 years later on the significant loss that you had with your partner. And really, from my perspective, so I'm actually 5 years going on 6 right now. And so I very much related to how you went through that journey. And as we all know, going through grief, time is definitely not a linear experience when it comes to how we navigate our grief. We might be think we're like through something and it magically comes back to haunt us once more. So, and then other things that we think, that that we can't experience joy around, we can. So I really wanted to dive into your book, Come As You Are, and that 5 year reflection. I had an opportunity to look at it. It's amazing. And we'll definitely link your work again in the show notes like we did with the first episode. But in the start of this book, you talk about equanimity and the spaces where Brian used to be. And that really hit home for me because I think one of the things that you and I talked about, kind of a sidebar after we quit recording last time, was around your future. And that one of the things I think that doesn't get talked about enough with grief really is the reflection of who you were going to be or who you thought you were going to be in the future, and this future version of you as you attach to, your partner or whoever it is that you lost. Could be a child, could be a partner, could be an animal companion. No matter what your loss is, there is a loss around that future pacing of what you thought you were going to be doing, where you thought you were going to be going together. And I think that can be a really hard space to navigate. So I wanted to ask you, just reading that your book and the beginning of the book, can you talk to us about kind of your shifts in identity and the recognition, even now reflecting back on that 5 year mark, of what your grief helped kind of create for you around where you were for your perceived future, and maybe even some spaces that it helped open up for you.
Boy, we spend so much time in our lives kind of trying to cement out our future path. I mean, that's what we do. I work as a coach. We ask people to set their goals. We ask people to create vision boards. We ask people to identify their purpose and all of these things so that you have something to work toward.
Mhm.
The the danger of that is that we get hooked into those things, that it becomes this all or nothing quest, that if it's not this, then it's crap,
Yeah.
right? If this is good, then that's bad. And I fully envision that Brian, well, we did spend the rest of our lives or the rest of his life together. I envision that, we grew old together. In fact, I remember um, when gay marriage became legal, and Vermont was the first state to do it. They
Right.
didn't do it as marriage; they did it as civil unions. And 6 months after that, we decided that we would get civil union because it was it just makes everything legally like so much easier. And I remember that a core piece of what we had talked about became part of the civil union ceremony, which was, and we had this vision of us as a relationship, and a lot of people envision themselves. I remember talking about this with Brian so distinctly. Two people sitting across from each other in chairs, gazing into each other's eyes. And we had identified an image for our relationship that was different. And that image was of two people sitting next to each other and gazing at the world side by side as it went by.
Love that.
Um, and that was such a core part of who we were and who we are.
Hmm.
Um, After he died, I really struggled with, and still struggle with, as you can see, this piece of, navigating without him. And it's interesting, Lindsay, you started this piece and you said, things come back to haunt us. And I used to have that perspective. Like it was bad that it came back. Like it's bad that I started getting choked up right now. Like
Yeah.
fuck, and that's not good because you got to put that behind you. You got to move on and other bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's that's just not how grief is. And if you're listening to this and this is the first time you're hearing that, I want you to know that is not how grief is. It's not something that you will ever, 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 ever put behind you.
Yeah. And I think once you can release attachment to that expectation of an outcome, you give yourself so much more freedom and it creates so much less overwhelm because I feel like the expectation that there's going to be some finish line to this is so unfair to all of us that are grieving because it's an unrealistic expectation that none of us can meet that ends up layering additional stuff on top of our grief.
Yes, that's the problem. And that piece that you talked about when you let it go,
Hmm.
that's equanimity.
Hmm.
That's the equanimity that I wrote about.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and actually, in true equanimity, there's nothing to let go. If you
Right.
have to let go of something, then you don't have equanimity around it. Or
Right.
you're working to get equanimity. It's when you're like, when you don't feel like you have to let go of it, that you really have that balance. Hmm.
Uh, what elements of this perceived identity did meeting a new person bring up? Or I hate the word trigger, but what did it bring up for you?
I hate that word trigger too. I hear people use that like it triggered me. It's like we're some sort of like
Again, it goes
mental
back to
case,
the
right?
like negative connotation when it's like, okay, we're just hitting up against stuff like Michael A. Singer says.
Right. We should just call it stuff.
Yeah.
Um, it it wasn't so much a piece of that identity that it hit. I had because, all right, I'm an old guy, or an old guy in terms of like internet world stuff, right? Internet world stuff. Like when Brian and I dated, like there wasn't even cell phones when Brian and I met. There were payphones. There weren't computers when we met. People watched videos on videotapes, big things, and went to Blockbuster to get them. That's the world that we were in. And then, it was like Rip Van Winkle. I woke up after he died, and the way that people were meeting was meeting on your phone. Like every single crackpot in the world who gets a phone is on your phone and part of your dating pool. That's really true.
It
It's
is so
crazy.
true. It is so
Um,
true.
as a gay man, you at least had to have your shit somewhat together to go into a gay bar, to even if you went in under the cover of darkness and were like freaked out about it, to meet another gay man, right? You at least had to have that piece. Um, but now people are on the apps and they're not even out, or they're married, or they're, God only knows. And people on the apps are objectified.
Yeah.
It's all about your pics. I
Hmm.
mean, it's the same thing
Yeah.
with Facebook. Like you have to look perfect and you have to
Yeah.
do this and you take 400 pics of your meal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I remember meals were something that you ate, not something you took a picture of to share with others. I never took pictures of it. In fact, we in my time when I met Brian, pictures you had to take pictures on film. You might take like 12 pictures and you had no idea what they were until the film got developed weeks later. Um, Now we're just obsessed with it. Um, and I'm speaking of myself too in that process.
Yeah.
Um, and so waking up like Rip Van Winkle to that whole new reality, I just became indifferent to people
Hmm.
and kept people at an arm's length. And it seemed like I had equanimity, but really I had been cultivating indifference, which in Buddhist psychology is the near enemy of equanimity.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it looks like equanimity, but when push comes to shove, it doesn't give you the foundational piece of
Yeah.
equanimity.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and I did have some questions around this too, but I feel like, there are certain things we have to do to survive grief. I mean, in those early days, like so much of the systems that we build and the processes that we create and the structures we put around ourselves, our body is calling to us at a deep instinctual level just to survive. And those tools that serve us early on in our journey definitely can become walls for anybody that we think we would like to let in.
Yeah. Yeah. I did that. And I just people came in, but I kept them at an
Yeah.
arm's length.
Yeah, and I
And
think regardless of the process, like, I mean, even if you hadn't woken up as Van Winkle and like been in this different world, I would tell you for me personally, like the apps don't resonate with me at all. And I am a firm believer that like I mean, I'm to everything is all energy, right? And so either somebody's energy resonates with you or it doesn't. And there's no way you can determine somebody's energy through an app, especially now with AI. So
oh
I
my
think
gosh.
that organic connection, like immediately. And for us, I would say, and I'll see what you think about this based on our first conversation, but I know for a fact that Roger, my husband on the other side, sent me the person that's in my life now. And so, again, I wouldn't have been able to read that and get those signs and have that energetic footprint of connection had it not been in person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, after a couple of introductions, I ended up meeting this guy, Peter, and we really connected. Um, and we really connected on a kind of an intellectual fun. It was whirlwind right. It was like a huge whirlwind. Um, and and I fell in love. And the problem was that I fell in love without it based in equanimity. Had it been based in equanimity, I would have in love and it would have been balanced. There would not have been a graspingness and
Mm-hmm.
attachment to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then what emerged emotionally because I had fake equanimity, indifference, what emerged emotionally was attachment and fear
Mm.
because and essentially I had burned my hand on the stove and now I was afraid of cooking.
Yeah, yeah. That's really interesting. So I actually had the opposite experience with my resistance. So Roger and I had very specific conversations, and I did a couple episodes at the beginning of the season where I talked about the beginning of season two where I talked about this, but we had very specific conversations, not about him like sending me somebody or somebody coming back into my life per se, because I know he knew I was resistant to that. And I was completely good. If that was the love chapter of my life was over with, our relationship was beyond exceptional, and most would be beyond, elated to have that once in their life, let
I
alone,
felt the same. I still
right?
feel the same way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that had been the end of the chapter and everybody close to me knew I felt that way, and it wasn't even, that wasn't a resistance energy. It just was like, if I'm in friendship community the rest of my life now, I am good with that. I know how unbelievably blessed I was to have that magical relationship. Most people don't ever get to have even a glimpse of that. And we had almost 20 years of it. So I was good with that. Thank you for listening to the Soul Revival Podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Stanton. I want to give you a special offer for all those who leave us a 5-star review. All you have to do is take a screenshot of that 5-star review, email it to info@thesoulrevival.com, and every month we're going to be giving away 30 days of the community membership. 30 days of community membership. That's 30 days of being around like-minded people who are on their spiritual expansion journey. All you have to do is give us a 5-star review, snap a screenshot, and email it to info@thesoulrevival.com. Thank you so much for listening. And he told me a specific sign that I told no one. People knew, lots of signs from him, but there was one
Uh-huh.
sign in specific. Go ahead.
No, I'm listening with
Oh,
excitement.
that he had said to me that he would send, like, if he ever came back to me in some capacity.
Uh-huh.
And when I met my now wife, there was some energy that was completely different. Again, I was no intention of being in a partnership with anybody again. Like I just wasn't even thinking about it. But less than 3 weeks after we met, she delivered that sign to me, and she delivered it at 11:11, which was another sign of his. And she knew nothing of any of this, right? I mean, and so I was gobstopped, and that took me down this path.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and with all of that, with all the magic and miracles, and I have so many stories. I mean, things happen almost on a daily basis. Letters she wrote me that mirror letters that he wrote me. I mean, just so many things I could share with you. Like so many signs, validations that are just like chilling, like magic. I mean, just pure magic. And I still found myself having to fight resistance. I mean, like if the smallest thing went south, I'd be like, "Wow, I'm out. Like I
I'm
can't
out of
do
here.
this." Like, so it's interesting to me. I went the opposite way. I mean, and this is why like each of our group experiences are unique, right? I mean, I went the opposite direction as you, but could have been a similar outcome, and like ultimately was for the best, right? As a similar outcome. But it's just interesting to me to the difference of how our bodies, and it really is our bodies, protecting our like nervous system and our hearts, respond when we're put back into the situation that demands us to pay attention to areas we might not have paid attention to yet.
Right. Right. Um, that was I had a very, you know, it was Peter that put the brakes on the relationship. I write that in the book about wanting that he was struggling with his own stuff, and that was difficult for me because it wasn't like we fought or we didn't get along or we had all this great stuff, but he was like, I can't be in a relationship with anybody right now. And and um and that was difficult because it wasn't a, you know, bad ending.
Right. But it's
It was
scary for you because it could feel like a perceived loss to your system.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It was absolutely all over those things. Ding, ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding, ding.
Yeah.
Because it was a really good thing. There wasn't any negative attached to
Right.
it.
Yeah. And you're like,
Um,
wait, I opened myself up again. I can't, this can't happen. This can't happen.
yeah. Um, and and again, I opened myself up based on this fallacy of indifference, right?
Right.
For people that are listening to, it's like not giving a shit
Yeah.
and thinking that that's going to protect you, right? And there's lots of people who go around and they're like, "Yeah, I don't care anymore. I just don't care." And that's how I was, and that gives you a false sense of protection because the moment you care, you don't have the you have lost the capability, or I lost the capability to have that balance and care at the same time.
Right.
That's what equanimity is. It's
Right.
it's the parts of indifference, except you do give a shit.
Right.
You do care.
Yeah.
You do love,
Yeah.
but there's the balance
It's
that
like fake
there.
affirmations. Just because you told yourself that doesn't mean that it's
Right.
true.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
There is a line that you said in the book. It's on page 20, and you talked about it's more than a line, but you talk about Brian's last breath and how you didn't collapse and you didn't scream. And that really caught my attention because as I read that, I was thinking about how when we get cut, physically cut, the deepest cuts don't bleed at first. And I was thinking about how when we have something traumatic happen to us, oftentimes it is like that delayed reaction, like that delayed bleeding.
Yeah. You feel like you're in a bubble,
Yeah, yeah,
right? You
yeah,
feel like you're in a bubble, and it takes time for the the deeper the loss and the more profound part of the of your love is the bigger the bubble is,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think and I think that is our body's way of protecting ourselves because if it all hit us at once when it happened, we wouldn't be able to survive it. I really believe that. Like I think that, you know, you're in that numb zombie-like state for X period of time for a reason. It's to help you survive.
Right, right. And it's funny this as people are listening to this to give you context that, you know, just was it yesterday. There was a story in the news in Shreveport, Louisiana,
Yeah.
of a man, a father who killed his like 7 or 8 kids and then himself.
Yeah.
And I all I could do as I read that was think about their mother. Or that, if they have a brother. I don't even know if there's a brother, sis. I don't think there is, but they're how do you possibly
You
continue
can.
after that?
Well, and you can't process all that grief at once. And I
Oh
think
my God.
that's I got hit like 6, 7 months later after
Yeah.
Roger passed. My closest friend passed away unexpectedly as well, and it took me years to get to a point where I could even really recognize that loss and grieve that loss because it was too much. And plus, the two of them were close, and they were definitely my biggest cheerleaders. So it just it took me time. Like I couldn't even. I could, it was like, you know, I had to put that one on a shelf because my body couldn't even handle, because I could only deal with what was, you know, what perceived to be immediately in front of me, you know, which was the
Right.
passing of Roger.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. When I read stories like that, it really brings up like so much compassion and and love, because I know what those people are struggling with, and I know they're surrounded by people that are saying things like they're in a much better place, and
yeah.
oh, just praise this thing and all this other stuff, you know uh you'll get over it, and on and on and on.
Oh,
And it's those platitudes are
oh, so
so
bad.
painful and bad.
Yeah, I one one of my favorites from, and I say that with deep sarcasm, from my experience was I had somebody say to me after understanding that I had those two losses within a 7 month period, saying to me, "Well, but who are you really grieving for?"
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was like, I'm done with this conversation now.
Yeah.
You can just be done.
Man, people, people.
Yeah.
I remember the piece that stood out to me most, I think I wrote about this in the first book, was calling around to creditors and bank accounts and
Oh,
other
it's
stuff.
the worst.
And so many of them had like these push one for this, push two for that. And I remember it was like push three if there's been a loss or whatever. And the computer on the phone said, we at such and such a bank of whatever are so sorry for your loss in this difficult time. I'm like, it did play that same damn message to everybody. Um, and that's the same message that we get when we bump into people and we say, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for your loss."
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I'm going to shift gears a little bit because there's an
Okay.
important topic that I want to cover. Tell us a little bit about your journey with MDMA and what parts it helped you access.
The and so there's a book about this that people can get called MDMA and Grief. And I don't set out to write these books. They just kind of happen as I'm bopping through
Channel.
life.
They're
Yeah.
channel.
Uh,
Spoiler alert.
Brian and I put together the background of this is that Brian and I put together these time capsules. If you ever have a chance to do this in a relationship that you're in, I so encourage you to do this. I'm kind of an over the top kind of guy, an overachiever. And so I bought a time capsule package. It was like the size of like a lunchbox to put your little trinkets in. Our time capsule ended up being in a Home Depot 5 gallon bucket and it was sealed. That's how much stuff we had. And we had all kinds of artifacts from the whole year. We did this in 1998, which was our 10-year anniversary before marriage had become legal. And then we did this again in 2013, and it was our 25th anniversary. And we planned to open this up um, at like our 50th anniversary with like lots of gala and everybody around us. The piece that was central to the time capsules, this is important, was that everybody wrote a letter to the future, to our future selves. They didn't address them. We just had them write it and put it in a card and nothing on the outside of the card and throw it in. M Most people I assumed would have written like trite stuff, you know, hope you're doing well, do you still have all your teeth? Ha 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 ha, that kind of stuff. And they did. But I knew that there was content in there from both Brian and me. And we each wrote two letters to the future. Um, and we wrote a letter to the other person. So Brian wrote a letter to me. And then Brian wrote a letter to his future self that was in there also. And I did the same thing. So that's 4 letters in 1998 and 4 letters in 2013 that I knew they were not fluff.
Hmm.
And I dreaded reading those letters. I could not read those letters. Um, and so the as I was learning about psychedelics and exploring options to do things and move through that, MDMA came up.
Hmm. The hard
And MDMA has had really great results with folks who have PTSD.
right. Yeah.
Tremendous. And the reason listeners and viewers about this is that MDMA, it's not you're not going to see rainbows when you do MDMA. You're going to feel really good.
Yeah. They
it's
call it the heart opener.
yes, it's like there's one of the aspects in Buddhist psychology is called loving kindness or mettavana.
Hmm.
And it's you feel this when you're taking MDMA.
Hmm.
Um, and so if someone has PTSD and they can't talk about this stuff, they're working with a therapist who knows all their deep, dark secrets that they can't talk about. They take this MDMA, and then the therapist asks them to talk about it.
Right. Helps them
What,
process.
right. And and they go through, tell me more about that experience that you had when that explosion happened. What did it look like? And they really push them. And so two things happen. MDMA kind of bubble wraps you so you can experience um, that peace and that memory without the traumatic feelings that go with it. And then the second thing that happens, this is really oversimplification of it, but it's a great way to think about it. The second thing that happens with the skilled therapist combined with the MDMA is it kind of cross wires your emotions. So now you have those memories and they're not all associated with doom and gloom and
Right.
bad. There's really great, in fact, it's really profoundly loving
Mhm.
and joyous when you're taking MDMA. That gets cross-wired with those memories. And so then when you access them again in the future, it's not just the bad stuff, but there's a
You don't have that negative attachment.
correct, there's a little bit of it's been diluted, for lack of a better
Yeah.
word. And so I did not do this with a therapist because I'm a therapist myself. But more than me being a therapist myself is that I knew that those 8 letters would far beyond take me into the darkness that I needed to do. And so I found an EMT buddy. I'm an EMT also. And so I wanted to make sure there was a medical person here in case I went off the deep end. He could revive me, take me to the hospital, all this other stuff. And he came over. And part of what I told him, all I wanted to do was I just wanted him to ask me questions about what was in the time capsule. And I was going to read all the letters out loud. Um, and a lot of the fluff were there, and then finally I came across the ones from myself to Brian, and they were and myself to me, and they were very difficult to read. Um, we talked about, what would happen, or, like Brian was like, "Am I still with you?" Like he wrote that in the letter.
Yeah.
So it was like you talked about, like signs from your husband.
Yeah.
And messages from your husband. Like there was this message from Brian um, from 1998 that was speaking across all these years. And, you know, if I'm not with you, I hope so. One of the things you hear people say, oh, they'd want you to remarry, right? If they were still here, they'd want you to be happy. They'd want you to do this. And you don't know what they would want necessarily. um, but in those letters, I knew what he want. I could read
Right.
what he wanted,
Yeah.
and I even wrote in one of my letters to myself, "Is Brian still alive?
Wow.
And how are you handling it?
Wow.
And what are your plans? And I hope you remember this, and I hope you remember that." And it was very um non-directive advice that I gave myself. And it was
Powerful.
so powerfully helpful.
Yeah. So powerful. Wow. Well, that's so interesting to me too, because after Roger passed, I went back and reread all the love letters that he had given me over the time when
Oh,
we were dating. And he also referenced multiple times, like if he was to pass before me, or, and like using that language. And I do feel like at a soul level, we know some elements of our path. And I think, he definitely knew that I was going to have to be surviving this without him here physically. And obviously, your soul knew that, and Brian's did as well. I it's so beautiful, it's so powerful, and I feel like that really can be such a healing tool at the end of the day. And I talk a lot about the parallel paths between trauma and grief, and I do feel like they're very much the same. And working with so many clients one on one, especially different ways that people, can pass that just layers immense trauma on top of it. So I find it very powerful that you felt called to do the MDMA journey. And I think, obviously you alluded to it too, but I would highly recommend that anybody listening, if you're going to explore that path, do it as part of a protocol with somebody trained, trained professional, because things will come up and you will be very thankful that you have that guidance.
absolutely. If you do it by yourself, you're just going to get swept up in the good feeling,
Yeah.
and you're going to miss out of it. Miss. It's the same thing. Like somebody, I've written a number of books about psychedelics, and if you've done good preparation, like months worth of preparation, and you have a good intention, and you have a strategy, and all these other things, you're going to have a very beneficial experience from
Yes.
psychedelics.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, well, you might as well be at a concert. And your mind's going to go off in that direction.
Yeah, well, and I think that brings up a really good point to me too. I think there really should be reverence around the medicines and what they're able to help you accomplish, and with that intention and reverence behind them, that there's true magic that can come from them, and so much deep, deep healing. But the set and setting really matter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not a Otherwise, you're just doing you might as well, like I said, do it at a concert, listen to music, go out dancing, carry on. Like, people take MDMA at concerts and dance and dance and dance and dance, and have really good feelings about that. This piece that we're talking about, there's not distractions, there's focus, there's not music, there's not these other pieces. You are there to do work with a substance that's helping you on the journey.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also very important to listen to your intuition and your body's guidance as to what you're being called to use, who you're being called to do the experience with, and trusting when you're ready, because I would highly encourage that you do a lot of the deep work prior to doing something like this, because it's going to give you the tools when you're in the experience to help yourself. And even though I do firmly believe you need a licensed facilitator, I also think that you can help kind of guide yourself through the experience in the right way that makes it the most transformational for you as well.
Yeah, that's well said. And I think you're hinting at the fact that, like a lot of things that get put out there, this psychedelics, if they continue to grow and become approved, could easily be the next silver bullet
Yeah.
that people look at. Like, that's what I got to do. I tried
Yeah.
this, I tried that, I did this, I did that, I did what, and I'm going to go do that.
Yeah.
Right. Um,
You need to have had the time and space alone and do the internal navigation first. I firmly believe that.
right. Right. And that if you do that, you're going to have a beneficial experience. Otherwise, you're doing the same thing that I talk about in the beginning of the book, which is chasing things without equanimity, and it just becomes another thing to put on your long checklists. I
Right.
did, I did the 10-day meditation course. I did the fire walking experience. I did the psychedelic experience, and I get 5 more and I get the special prize. It doesn't work that way.
Uh, well, I so appreciate you coming back for round two with me, Scott. I just so enjoyed both of our conversations, and I just know from navigating both of your books myself, and I know you've got so many more that I need to navigate, and I would encourage our listeners to check Scott out. His work is super powerful, and I found it, you can feel a reflection of your own experience so deeply in the book, no matter what your journey is with grief. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks again for having me.
If this episode resonated with you, that's not a coincidence. That is spirit leading you to where you are meant to be. Choose soul expansion, choose community, choose growth. Join us at our sacred community where healing is better because we do it together. Go to www.thesoulrevival.com.